Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Unfuck Your Relationships podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Panning, and today's episode is about the blind spots of the dismissive avoidant. So when I say dismissive avoidant, this is what people typically think of when they say like, oh, they're an avoidant. This is what they're speaking to. And what's really funny is because so my episodes with anxious attachment pop off. Like, you guys go crazy for that. The ones around dismissive avoidant don't do so well. And I'm like, of course, because the avoidant is not trying to work on themselves. Because one of their deactivating strategies is, I'm fine. I'm fine, right? They're the problem. Look how fucking crazy she is. Look how emotional she is. Look how needy she is. All of the things. And so I just find that really, really fascinating. So let's get this episode fucking popping. Let's get people listening to this. I was going to say, send this to an avoidant in your life. Don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, you can, but see how they respond. Check in and ask. You know, I came across this really amazing podcast. I think you get a lot from it. If you're open to it, I'd love to share it with you. That's how I would frame it. Not, I came across this podcast on dismissive avoidance and you need to listen to it because you. Unless you're really close. I don't know your relationship, so like you do you, boo. So last week we went through the kind of the gift and the shadow of the anxious attachment, okay? So if you haven't listened to that, definitely go listen to that. Even if you're a dismissive avoidant and you've had relationships with anxious attachers, it can be really helpful for you to listen to the other side and gain perspective. And honestly, I'm sure half my listens on dismissive avoidant stuff is from anxious attachers trying to understand their dismissive avoidant partner better rather than the actual dismissive avoidant listening to the podcast. So, you know, I want you to hear this, that your brain, if you're dismissive avoidant, your brain is tricking you. Like, you're not as fine as you think you are. And that's not to say like you're broken or you're fucked up, but like, I just want to offer you a different perspective that can give you something for you to chew on, because you love logic, which is what we're going to get into, right? So last week I spoke about how typically when people go through a breakup, they look at, okay, what did I do really well in that relationship? So, you know, I was communicative, or, you know, I was really sexually expressive, or I was vulnerable, or I asked for my needs to be met, or whatever it was. And then you will look at those things and then double down on those and hope that things that you were really bad at just won't come up again, right? You're hoping that with a different partner, with a different relational dynamic, you know, I'll just pick someone new, and then they won't have those same traits that my ex had. And so then those same things won't come up. They won't trigger those same things in me. But as we know, the shadow always wins, and it's going to find a way. And so you actually need to deal with it, because the dismissive avoidant is very good at burying their own pain and not recognizing it, right? So this is where people get stuck, is because they double down on the things that they went well and they avoid their blind spots. So for a dismissive avoidant, your strength is logic, right? So you will think about things. You really probably are good at assessing whether this person could be a good fit for you, or does this make sense? Do we want the same things? You know, you're not so much going off, how does it feel when I'm with this person? You're going, does this make sense? Right? And so typically more men tend to lean in an insecure attachment style. More men typically lean more avoidant, and more women typically lean more anxious. Why would that be? Men, again, generalization, typically would be more logic driven, and women tend to be on the more right brain, you know, so creatively driven, emotions, all of that thing. Like, it's not saying like, oh, women are emotional. It's saying we're more attuned to our emotions on a whole, you know, on average. I've met plenty of women where I'm like, wow, you couldn't name an emotion if you tried. And many men where they're like very attuned to their emotions. So it's not, you know, all over the place. So the dismissive avoidant, their strength is logic, pattern recognition, cause and effect thinking, right? So like, okay, if I do this, then this is going to be the reaction. If I do this, then here's how she's going to respond. And that's kind of where you'll get stuck, because you're brilliant at replaying the movie of a relationship and seeing, what worked, what didn't, where it went wrong. And this is something, I see the avoidant in myself, because I can see where I'm very logic driven. I can be very, like process and, okay, like this happened and, might be ADHD. I don't know. But logic is not going to save you in love. I know. It's terrible, isn't it? It's horrible, because relationships, whilst yes, logic is required to assess compatibility, relationships are built on a felt experience, right? How do you logic your way into or out of love? I don't know how to do that, right? Love for me has been a sensory experience, a felt experience in my body. I don't know that anyone can, I don't think there's one description for love. If I were to ask you, what does love mean to you? It's going to be a very different answer to what it means to me, to what it means to, Sarah down the street or Betty or whoever. So it's going to mean something different for everyone. And that's really infuriating for a dismissive avoidant, because it's based on a felt experience, not logic. And so where this would have come from is, you guessed it, childhood, where expressing emotions maybe was shamed or looked down on, or just not accepted or welcome in the environment that you grew up in. And so then you learned, don't bother someone with your emotions. Just figure it out. Just be resourceful. You're responsible for your own emotions, which there's truth to that, but you have to look after, you need to look out for you, right? You need to look out for number one. And so your defense mechanism, much to your detriment, is that you're really good at filtering out pain. You're really good at filtering out pain, which is challenging in a relationship, because there will inevitably be pain. Not 80% of the time. Hopefully it's like 5% of the time, or maybe less than that, but there will be pain. And so when you experience pain, and I mean like hurt, or, oh, that didn't feel good, or you've crossed a boundary, or whatever it is, rather than going into the felt sense of, oof, that didn't feel good, you'll go into irritation, contempt, disrespect, detachment, withdrawing, all of the things. So as a deactivating strategy from feeling the vulnerability of your pain. And so what this looks like in real time is, rather than saying, oh, that comment hurt my feelings, it's, you're being irrational. Can you see it? Right? So it's like, you're being irrational. I don't care. I'm over this conversation. Oh, this is so annoying, whatever it is. But what's underneath that is actually pain. And so if you're an anxious person listening to this, can that also give you some context as to why your partner might act the way that they do? I'm not saying that it's right or it's acceptable behavior. I'm not saying that you need to condone it or stick around for it, but I'm saying it might give you a different perspective and give you some understanding of why they may act the way that they do. And maybe through that, you can then come to terms and find some middle ground together. And so what happens real time with this blind spot of being like overly stuck in logic and not enough in the feeling is that when there's a disagreement or an argument, with you and your partner, once the fight is over, your brain kind of deletes the pain and you're just stuck with like the neutrality of it, right? You've had space to go and de-escalate and to take space and to be on your own and down-regulate. And then you're like, okay, I can come back and I can be in connection again. But you've actually forgotten that it hurts. So what happens then from that place is you think about the fight and you go, okay, here's how I'm going to do it differently next time. Beautiful. We love that you're doing that. We love that you're thinking about it differently. But you've forgotten the actual emotional pain of the situation. And so in that, the next time that you get in an argument, that same emotional pain is triggered. It doesn't have to be about the same thing, the same topic, doesn't matter. But that emotional body is triggered within you. And because you haven't actually dealt with that and you've just thought about, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay plugged in and I'm going to use nonviolent communication. Babes, you're hijacked already. You're hijacked already because you haven't dealt with the emotional body. And so then you're trying to deal with an emotional problem from a rational lens. And so then what happens is you don't ever end up actually honoring your emotions because that same thing happens, right? Your emotional body is triggered. Deactivation comes in. You need to withdraw. The walls go up. Your partner feels discomfort. They feel dismissed. And because of that, you're like, oh my God, because there's this narrative from the dismissive avoidant that other people's feelings are your responsibility, which they're not, but I understand what that feels like, right? To feel like, oh, fuck, their feelings are my responsibility. So when your partner feels dismissed, the walls go up even further. And then you're like, oh my God, I need to de-escalate even further. Again, so what happens, it's like the logic plans, then the argument happens, the emotional walls happen, you de-escalate, you deactivate. Okay, I feel relieved. Here's how I'm going to do things differently. Okay, great. I'm so excited. That's going to be amazing. Thank you. That's exactly what I need. Okay, 3 weeks later, you get into an argument again. Whoa! My emotional body is triggered. I need to fucking de-escalate. Oh my God, you're dismissed. I'm getting even more triggered. Oh, you feel like I'm invalidated. Oh, my walls are going up even more. I need to de-escalate. I need to run to fucking Russia to get away from you. Okay. I feel better. Okay, I can be in connection again. Here's what I'm going to do differently. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like the same fucking loop on repeat. The negative side of this is that when you block out the pain, you also block out your body's wisdom. And in your body's wisdom is telling you what hurts, right? So I don't mean like, ow, my shoulder. I just mean when you are numb to what actually hurts you, then you end up tolerating shit that you shouldn't. You end up staying in dynamics that maybe you shouldn't. You know, people want to shit all over dismissive avoidance, and I have a lot of empathy for them because there's so much information out there for anxious attachers, and I get it. Like, you know, I've been there, I understand, but I don't think there's a lot of empathy for people who are avoidant. And I really hadn't experienced that too much until quite recently, where I was like, oh my God, like my body is so flooded that I don't know how to deal with this. Like I feel like I need to run. Now, I said this in another episode a couple weeks ago where I was like, but if I were to run, then I just solidify. Oh my God, see, you feel so much better when you run away. So I'm learning, how can I be with this sensation of, you know, overwhelm or, oh, this is a lot, and stay and stay and stay and stay in connection, right? So that's something to note, that it's really, really, really important that you stay connected to your pain. If you're dismissive avoidant, you're going to be like, no fucking thank you. I've spent decades trying to detach from that part of myself, but this is actually going to be the thing that creates healthy relationships for you. And even if it's not with a partner, it is going to create a much safer and a much healthier relationship with yourself. When you can actually acknowledge your pain and validate that for yourself and recognize that things hurt you and then bring that into a relationship, oh, chef's kiss, you're golden. So the shift for you is going to be around balancing your logic and your thinking, which is stunning. We love that about you. Balancing that with conscious emotion and allowing yourself to sit in a feeling without running from it. So, you know, a big fear is, oh my God, I'm going to get lost in it and I'm going to fully lose myself in a relationship, when that doesn't necessarily have to be true, because you can trust yourself enough to set boundaries. You can trust yourself enough to stick to and honor your boundaries. But when those boundaries become walls, that helps no one in relationships, right? But this is about staying long enough to let like I said, like to feel the sting of things and then stay with yourself in that pain. Share your pain with the person who has hurt you. And ultimately, you know, there's a deep fear around, if I share this with someone, I'm going to be met with being invalidated, rejection, being laughed off, and thinking, oh, fuck, why do you think your needs are important? This is, you know, for a dismissive avoidant, they truly believe their needs are not important at all. And so you can imagine the inner turmoil that goes on for someone who has a dismissive avoidant attachment style, because they're like, you know, I want to be in connection, and I don't know how, because they want to be in connection, but they deeply, deeply fear it. And so, you know, the anxious person is like, well, I'm scared of it too, but like, I'm willing to risk everything. The avoidant person is like, I'm not willing to risk it. And I've said this to quite a few clients to give them more understanding. It's often not about not wanting to give that to you. It's from a space of, I don't have it to give. I don't have the capacity to meet you in the depths of love that you are requiring. That doesn't make the anxious person wrong for requiring that depth of love, and it doesn't make the avoidant wrong for not having it to give. You know, like, I use this example. I'm like, I don't know why this is fucked up. I hope not. Like, I was like, you wouldn't look at someone who's a paraplegic and be like, get up and run, right? They would be like, well, I can't. You wouldn't be like, oh, well, I can. Look, I'm doing it right now. If I'm doing it, why can't you? Because they don't have the capability to do that like you do. And so you wouldn't look at them and say that. You'd be like, oh my gosh, it makes total sense. It's the same thing where an avoidant person is like, I don't have the capability of giving that to you. Now, of course, an avoidant person can gain the skill, just like an anxious person can gain the skill to reel it in and self-regulate and be able to self-source and self-soothe. So of course we can always shift our attachment style, whether you're anxious, dismissive, fearful, avoidant, it doesn't matter. You can always shift to secure. I'm living proof. I'm doing it. I'm not going to say I've done it, but I'm doing it. I'm more secure than I ever have been in my life. Like, I'm able to stay in connection. I'm able to be apart from connection. And even though sometimes connection feels overwhelming to me, I understand why that is, given my history and my patterns and all the things. And I'm like, okay, cool, but I'm willing to stay in it. So as a dismissive avoidant, what I would look at is when I get triggered, where am I armoring up immediately rather than actually sinking into the feeling of what's going on for me? Sinking into the pain, sinking into the hurt. And that doesn't mean you just stay in the fucking hurt for 6 months and you're like, oh, my life is terrible. No, not at all. It could literally be a 2-minute thing that you're like, ooh, ouch. You know, like, that didn't feel good, or I don't like how I'm showing up in this relationship, or I feel, you know, this is a big thing for avoidance as well that no one really talks about. They often feel shame for not being able to give the anxious person what they want. That they are trying. And to be met with you actually trying your best, and to be met with someone saying, well, your best isn't fucking good enough, it's pretty sad. And that doesn't mean that, because it might not be enough for that person. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not enough. And that's the distinction to make. I think this is really important, that you feel some of that shame that maybe you can't give this person what they want right now. And if that's you, okay, do you want this relationship? Are you willing to lean in? Are you willing to do what it takes to build your capacity and resiliency to be in connection and stay even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels like, my skin is crawling, all of the things? Can you do that? So balance the logic with the emotion, okay? The anxious person, you're like, you need more logic, right? So last week I was like, you give all of your heart, you need more boundaries, right? You need to think more. Do I know this person? Do I like this person? Are we compatible? Where the dismissive avoidant, you're kind of the opposite, where it's like, yeah, you're very good at boundaries. You're very good at assessing things. You're good at logic and all of that. Your lesson is more emotion, more feeling, more compassion for yourself and all of the things, okay? So I hope this was helpful. If you are a dismissive avoidant and you want to do the work, fucking hallelujah, praise the Lord. We love you for that. Come join us in the Connected Woman. We start on the 20th of October, which is exciting. So we're going to go through all of this and the different shadow archetypes, and you'll be able to see yourself in a couple of them. I can fucking guarantee it. And one of the shadow archetypes is a strong, independent woman, by the way, and this is where most of my avoidants tend to sit. I can do it. I've got it all on my own. So we go through that. We go through inner child, reactivity, a whole bunch of things. You're going to get the logic side. Don't worry. But I think also the most important bit for you specifically is the embodiments, where you're actually going to get a chance to visit these in your body. And you might be like, okay, I'm checked out. No, I'm not doing that. Well, okay. Have fun repeating the same patterns for the rest of your life. That's not to scare you, but it's like, if you want to do something different, like, you got to do something different. Okay? So I love you. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you next week.